Welcome to the video, guys. So today I'm going to be talking about Burgage Plots because they can be pretty confusing in the early game. I'll be going over the different layouts you can choose from and how that affects the structure later on. So let's start with some examples here. I've got 3 different plot sizes, and this is just to show you guys the different layouts you can choose from. So the first one is the simple layout, which is just the house itself. Now the second type has a backyard extension, so you can see here if we extend the back out like so, we have this line that divides and you have this icon here. This is your backyard, and you can actually put different stuff in it, like different crops. Now the next type has both a backyard extension and a housing extension. So if you make this a bit wider than the last one and you also make it just as long or longer, you get the backyard extension and you also get this little house with a plus on it. So this is an option when the structure is built to actually double the housing capacity. So we'll go ahead and build this one too, and I'll show you guys some more features once these are built. Alright guys, so as you can see now we have our 3 houses. This is the basic one like I told you about. We can level it up to level 2 since we have our requirements met down here. I'll tell you more about how to meet these in a second. Now our next house you can see has the backyard slot. So what you can do with this is if you click on that, you get a bunch of options here. So to begin with, you can actually turn your backyard into a garden, or chicken coop, or goat shed. And if you have the point unlocked in your skill tree, you can upgrade it to an apple orchard. Now if you want to access any of these, the plot has to be level 2. So basically to get level 2, you have to meet all these requirements down here. Water access, church level, and you have to have some stalls nearby to provide your villagers with the right stuff. So like I said before, this one actually already meets all of my requirements. So if I go ahead and level that up to 2, we will see it upgrade here.
Hey, bring that piece over here.
So here we have a level 2 Burgage Plot, and you can definitely see the difference here. So if we open this up, you can see a lot of the requirements have changed. Instead of 1 here and 1 here and 2 here, now it's 1, 3, and 2. And in addition to water access, you need a tavern. And in addition to church access, you need a level 2 church. So once you have all these things, then you can upgrade to level 3. As long as you also have the funds and the materials. I'm actually lacking roof tiles right now. So assuming you have a level 2 house now, you could actually choose one of these additional extensions. And if you've already chosen one of these, you can actually demolish these and then replace it with one of these. However, once you pick one of these, you can't replace it. Your only chance would be to demolish the entire building. So now the extensions include a bakery, a blacksmith, a brewer, a joiner, a cobbler, a tailor, an armor, and a fletcher. So as you can probably tell from the sound of it, a lot of these are pretty important for your town, and eventually once your town gets big enough, you will need one of each of these at least. I will say the bakery is pretty good though, because you can make a ton of bread quickly, and you can sell it or ship it out to your other villages. So now that we covered the basic plot, the level 2, and also the one with the extension in the backyard, we'll look at the one with the housing extension as well. So here you can see we have multiple options at the top. You have your backyard slot, and you can also level it up, but what we have in addition now is expand living space. So let's go ahead and do that. So now you can see we actually have another little building here, and this extra building here is actually to house another family. So you can see it's gone from a family size of 1 to 2. Now the interesting thing about Burgage Plots is that when you level it up to level 2, you get access to all the other backyard extensions. When you level it up to level 3, and you have a housing extension, it actually doubles the amount of families you can put in there. In other words, if you have a single family house, they'll go from 1 to 2. If you have a 2 family house that's already upgraded, it will go from 2 to 4. So if I take you over here, you can actually see an example of this. So I've got my orchards right here, and what I did with these is you can see it's level 3. And the families here is actually 4. Now you don't want to do this for every house, but it is very useful if you have a town center and you want the town center to be relatively dense with population. The houses I wouldn't recommend doing a double plot on would actually be the ones where you have your unique backyard extensions. For instance, your blacksmith or your Fletcher. The simple reason behind that is that when you have a blacksmith, you effectively turn all the people living in the house into artisans. And those artisans only create what you tell them to create here. They don't really leave the house and they don't have any other jobs. Now the reason you want to limit that is because when you have 1 or 2 families working as a blacksmith, you're going to have a crazy high production. So it's actually quite wasteful to have 2 or 4 families as a blacksmith, for instance, because the production as is already too high. I also want to talk about the ideal locations to put down Burgage Plots. Until you get more experience playing Manor Lords and you kind of see how everything works, it's pretty easy to put houses in the wrong spot or not build out your town correctly, so I'll give you a few tips. So in Manor Lords, to get access to all the higher level stuff in the game, you do have to level up your plots to level 2 and eventually level 3. They don't all have to be level 3, but you do want enough of them to reach the maximum village level. So you can see up here at the top, my current settlement level is Large Town, which is the biggest it can get. Every time you level it up, you get a skill point. So if you click at this header up here, it brings you into the skill tree, and you can see what things I've spec'd into. If you're not able to level up your town, you're not going to be able to get a lot of these really important skills. One of the most important I find is rye cultivation, just because there's a lot of areas in my map right now that have really poor fertility. So if you want to do any farming, you're going to have to get at least 2 skill points and make your way up here. Likewise, to build any type of armor, you're going to need to put points into armor making and eventually advanced armor making. So the best way I've found to lay out my Burgage Plots is to put them in an area where all the requirements are going to be satisfied. So my first tip here is make sure you have a well nearby. Make sure your tavern is kind of in the middle of your town. You can also have multiple taverns if you want, if your town gets big enough. I personally have 2 in my town right now. And you're also going to want your church very close by. So you can see my tavern is right here next to all my houses. This was my original row, and this was my second row. So the tavern is pretty close to everything. And my church is right next to it here. The other thing that's extremely important is having your marketplace nearby. And this is something that might trip you up because it's got some weird mechanics in it. All you need to know for right now is you need a fuel, a food, and a clothing stall nearby. The more you have, the better, even if they're kind of redundant, because if one runs out, then you don't have a house that's going to run out of food or firewood. So I've got one marketplace down here with 6 slots, and if we go to the other end, I have another one. Now the last thing I want to show you guys is my little town down here. This is the same town, but I kind of extended it outward. So what we've got here is a couple rows of Burgage Plots that are just level 1. I have a marketplace of 3 right in the middle, so you can see everything's within range. And I've got my extra tavern over here. So with the tavern being here, it's going to supply all of these houses with ale. However, if you're not trying to get a level 3 Burgage Plot, you don't need a tavern. It's only when you go from 2 to 3 that you need to have the tavern activated. And you can also see these large plots right here. They're actually just 1 house each, and they have a huge garden. So what's cool about having a large backyard is that you can put your vegetables or whatever in there, and you can actually have the families assigned to other jobs, and whenever those jobs are waiting, they'll come back and they'll work on the garden. And you can see I've done the same thing with the orchard over here. I do want to warn you guys though, I do encourage you to put backyard extensions, but try to limit the size. There is a threshold where if you make them too big, the amount of families that you have just won't be enough to actually tend to the garden or the orchard or whatever it is. I would say this size is pretty good, but you can experiment with going bigger and just kind of seeing what happens. Alright guys, well hopefully that gets you started with Burgage Plots in Manor Lords. I wanted to make this video because I had a pretty challenging time in the beginning figuring out all the mechanics and features of Burgage Plots. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to learn more about the different buildings in Manor Lords, such as the marketplace or the tavern, the granary, the storehouse, I'll be making separate videos on those to go more in depth. And with that guys, we're going to wrap up the video, so thank you for watching, hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, please leave a like on your way out, and if you want to see more Manor Lords content like this, be sure to subscribe. Thanks, have a good one, guys.